Welcome to Pop Culture Maniacs' podcast. This week, it's our host, Kieran Freemantle, and with me is Henegan, our TV editor from Pop Culture Maniacs. This week, we'll be discussing the Harry Potter franchise. Hello, Gene. How are you this week?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Yep, I'm fine, thank you. So I thought it'd be good to just jump straight into it. I thought talk about our personal histories with the Harry Potter franchise. So, how did you get into it?
Well, I kind of came a bit late to this series. My entire family had read the books up through book 4 at the time, before I decided that I wanted to give it a go. So, yeah, I was about 16 or so when I started reading the books, and then read the books, watched the movies. I've even seen the Cursed Child play, so I've made it through a lot of Harry Potter.
Yeah, cool. My own experiences, I came into it a bit late myself. I got into it through the film. So, Philosopher's Stone came out, or as it's known in America, Sorcerer's Stone. Watched that, quite enjoyed it. So I ended up getting into the books, and obviously here we are now. And obviously now it's one of the most popular franchises in the world. So obviously, for good couple of questions would be, what's your favorite book and what's your favorite film in the franchise?
Oh, well, I think my favorite book is probably, I don't know. It's a toss-up between,
Sorry,
probably the 5th book is probably my favorite. Because Sirius Black was at the time my favorite character, so to lose him, it was a big blow. And in terms of films, probably the 3rd. I just loved the artistic Alfonso Cuarón work. It just kind of elevated the story above your simple kind of fantasy film for me.
Cool. I agree with you on the film. Prisoner of Azkaban's favourite film, which seems to be the general consensus amongst the Potter fandom. My favourite book is Goblet of Fire, because that's sort of the jumping off point from it, sort of turning from quite light to being much darker stories. Like when then Cedric Diggory died, I was like reading that and it was like, damn, when it happened.
Yeah, that was the dividing line, I think, in the series as a whole. Once you start killing off children, then that's kind of the moment where it all changes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I like about the Harry Potter series as a whole, is how it evolved, because it was started off very light, pretty comedic, and obviously very much intended for children. But as both the films and the books progressed, it did get slowly darker and darker in tone and events.
Yeah, and that was one of the main reasons it took me so long to kind of get into the books was, my younger siblings read them, and I thought, oh, these are books for kids. And by the time my parents started reading them, when Goblet of Fire came out, that was kind of the moment for me to be like, oh, this isn't just a book for children anymore. There's something more here going on.
Yeah, and and obviously it's had a massive cultural impact in general, because I think obviously within UK there's been there's been a tourism boom specifically for Harry Potter. A lot of the filming locations were obviously popular to visit. So you obviously got near me, which I live in the West Country, so there's like Gloucester Cathedral was used as a filming location, and a village of Laycock Abbey. And I remember when I go into a pub in Laycock, they even had a newspaper article when it was used as a location for the Sixth film, because it was when Jim Broadbent's character, I've forgotten his name now.
Slughorn.
No, that's it. Yes, when he was hiding out when he was hiding out, and Dumbledore and Harry recruited him to back to Hogwarts. and there's just so many locations around England, definitely England and Scotland, and a few in Wales as well. And I remember once when I was doing a bit of film work for someone, like one of the actresses was saying that she was interviewing to do like walking tours of Harry Potter around London.
Yeah, I mean, several years ago, when I was in London, a friend and I went to the Harry Potter set tour at the soundstage where they filmed, and that was actually pretty cool. And I've, of course, been to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter down in Orlando a couple times, which is shockingly well done.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't been to Florida for a long time, so I've never actually seen the Wizarding World over there. Though obviously, you have to book months in advance to do the tour, the studio tour, or book to see the play.
Yeah, and I saw the play during its first few months here in the States on Broadway. And that was interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't actually seen the play or read it. I heard that the play is very good to watch, but I've heard the story and it's pretty...
I mean, like theatrically and the technical aspects of it are very, very cool. And there's some particularly incredible moments done with like the most simple effects that are just brilliant. But the play itself is just a mess. I'm shocked that anyone thought it was a good idea to write it.
Probably one of my fears why Jack Thorpe was one of the writers, and he's also now one of the writers of his Dark Materials series, which is one of my personal favourite series of books.
Yeah, he's
prolific.
Just the play is just so revisionist, and the things it pulls off. It's just, I mean, not to spoil anything, because you promise not to spoil when you leave the play, but there's a reveal that happens right at the end of the play that had the entire audience of over 1,000 people groan in despair at how bad it was. So when you have an entire theater of Harry Potter fans disappointed, it's just, there's a problem with the writing.
Yeah, I heard it being described as bad fanfic.
Oh, yes. It's absolutely bad fanfic.
So, yeah. Also, the question I missed out earlier. Also, what, assuming you're a big Potterhead, what's your house and what is your Pronas? If I could pronounce that right.
Well, my house is Ravenclaw.
Oh, cool.
Which, pretty much anyone who meets me immediately, pegs me as Ravenclaw, which I respect. And my Patronus, according to the Pottermore website, is a black mamba snake.
Ooh.
Yeah. Cool. What about you?
When I did the Pottermore test, it said Ravenclaw, and if I was honest with myself, I'm probably somewhere between Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff. And my Patronus is a Siberian cat.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I like cats, so I'm pretty happy with it. I would say, obviously, the thing with the films, though, is they are the abbreviated version of the books, because the first two films were pretty loyal to the films. The first two films were pretty loyal to the books. But I think as the story got bigger in the novels, the films just couldn't keep up, could they? So a lot of subplots were cut out. Like obviously, what were the big ones they changed? Like Hermione's animal elf rights activism. That was completely cut out. Obviously, a lot like the Quidditch got cut out just because they pretty much the films were the streamlined version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
There's also I heard that there has been speculation that they might remake the Harry Potter series as a TV show.
Oh, good God, no.
I think that's just what some people speculate. And I think, obviously, when the films were made, the book series hadn't been finished until pretty late in the day. So obviously some things that were some things that became important in the books might have not, if the filmmakers didn't realize it, might, because I know like reading like on the IMDb trivia, or like J.K. Rowling said that oh no, that's it, with yeah, that I remember when J.K. Rowling, she's saying like the role of the House of Sirius Black's house elf, that they couldn't cut him from the couldn't cut him from Order of the Phoenix, because if they did, then they would have caused themselves some big problems for the end of the series.
Yeah, and I mean that's just kind of the risk you take, and
Yeah,
you know, as I'm one of those rare Harry Potter fans who didn't particularly care all that much for the kids part of the story. I didn't really care all that much whatever would happen to Harry, Hermione, or Ron. I was far more concerned with the adult characters, and it could be a factor of being older when I read them that I never really related to the kids in the beginning. But you know, I would have liked to have gotten, you know, more from the books in the films where you dealt with, you know, Tonks or Lupin or Moody in a bigger way than they were used in the films themselves. I mean, I know it's obviously an issue where you've got, you know, 200 characters and you can only put so many in. But I guess if they ever remade it into a miniseries, you could potentially give more time and more space to additional characters.
yeah,
That being said, I think it would be foolhardy to try to remake Harry Potter in any way, shape, or form. I think we're good with what we've got.
yeah, yeah. I would say, going back to the books, what I liked about them is they were told from Harry's perspective. We learned as Harry learned. So obviously Harry was obviously an outsider to the wizarding world because of obviously never knew anything about his parents' heritage. Never knew anything about his parents being wizards. So that was always kept a secret. And then obviously he was worried, like he remember reading the books, he was worried that he wouldn't know anything, being bottom of the class and all that. But as he grew up, and I think obviously yeah, no one in the books is going to read no one reading the books would have started say jumping off at book 4. They would have read the whole thing. So you learn as Harry learned. I know any information told to Harry about any outside events, it was either as told to him like by someone like Dumbledore or
Oh yeah, the Dumbledore explains it all chapter. My dad would always call it that.
or I was going to say like a vision, because he obviously had the psychic link with Voldemort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things. We'll probably talk a bit later about the future of the series, but like I know you told me beforehand you didn't see Crimes of Grindelwald, but problem with like Crimes of Grindelwald, if it really went into world building prequelitis disease. Had a lot of that.
And I heard it had some like timeline issues with what had previously published, and it doesn't quite line up anymore.
I think my big thing is, why is Nagini suddenly a human? And that why couldn't she have just been a snake?
Yeah, and I heard McGonagall was teaching at Hogwarts before she was supposed to have been born.
Yeah,
which is someone should have figured that one out.
Well, again, this is J.K. Rowling wrote the screenplay. She should have known her own work. Yeah, obviously, one of the things is the world's huge in Harry Potter. That's what I really love about it. It's got so much history in it. If you sort of like ideas, if they did do spin-off films and TV series, obviously I know a popular idea would be like the founding of Hogwarts with the obviously with the founders. Ideas, you know, like Voldemort's mum had a really tragic backstory because she was a squib abused by her inbred family.
And a couple I've heard from people are the Marauders time in Hogwarts,
Yeah,
which we saw bits of, but we didn't really get the
yeah,
full look
yeah.
at, or even
I,
just doing the First War, which would
yeah.
be an interesting setup to better explain some of the relationships in the book series itself.
I was going to say, if they did the Marauder storyline, they would have shown that that James Potter was a bit of a dick.
God, he was the worst.
Yeah. What else? I know this is a small event, but because I remember reading the books, they like had goblin rebellions, so could have done
Yeah.
that, showing that wizards aren't very nice to goblins, and so much. You can even go into the future because in the fourth book, Hermione explains that that technology moves a lot slower in the wizarding world. That things like bugs, phones, and all that don't work in Hogwarts. So things don't actually change much in Hogwarts itself.
Yeah, and it'd be, I mean, just jumping off that a bit too, it'd be an interesting kind of to explore how, the Muggle world at some point might overtake Wizarding World in certain areas, and see if that impacts Wizarding World in any way. Things like that would be interesting to look into. Although at this point, I'm not sure we should be giving J.K. Rowling any more ideas to write about, because
Yeah.
I don't really trust that.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get on to J.K. We'll get on to J.K. Don't worry about that. But yeah, it does, because obviously, I think they can use the Star Wars sequels as a template of what not to do. Actually, come up with a story, and I think with something like Harry Potter and the Wizarding World, there's always going to be evil of some form. You imagine there'll be followers of Voldemort or Grindelwald's ideology. Like now, there are people who admire certain dictators. So it would be similar to so you can make a commentary on that. There's always going to be that sort of racial element in the wizarding world that people dislike Muggle-borns. And it just, as I said, the cycle, it's just an eternal battle between good and evil.
Yeah, it's a cyclical thing, and there's always going to be, unfortunately, some awful thing in our world to mirror in the world of Hogwarts and in the Wizarding World. So there's always going to be something that they can pull and write about from that.
Exactly. And obviously, well, the Wizarding World films, they're doing about Newt Scaramanga, but because not you don't necessarily have to do it about Harry or his family. You can go to other characters. You can maybe make some references if they do ever go into the future to like have it. So for something like, have you ever watched Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I have not watched them, but I am aware of kind of how they work.
Okay, so sort of similar to that, because Legend of Korra did bring back certain characters, but it from the original series. But since it was in the much further along in the timeline, it was her story, new character, do something like that, and it's sort of what Star Wars should have done, really. Create a new characters, maybe have the old ones come back here for a bit of moral support, a little bit of fan reference, but don't make them so central.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do, it's just my personal opinion on sequels. If you're going to do a sequel, you need to, let it stand on its own. And, linking it so tightly to something that comes before just invites the comparison. And so, I mean, with something like, Harry Potter, you've got so many people, so many characters, so many minor characters that you can just pull and use as well. And I mean, that's kind of what Star Wars is trying to do with The Mandalorian, is expand it without necessarily linking it to the original trilogy. And it's, been okay. There's been some growing pains, but, the idea of pulling an element that's familiar to the audience and then building around that is always a better idea in my view than pulling entire famous characters and trying to reset them in a new world.
Yeah, all hail Baby Yoda. yeah, and I think if they ever do any sort of future films, they could explore some of these elements that were never explored in the film. So as I said, like the abuse of other magical races beside that, since most of them are pretty much an underclass, elves are pretty much slaves, centaurs aren't pretty much, some of them are willing to go to war with humanity, giants aren't exactly well regarded, and obviously goblins as sort of treated quite lowly as well.
Yeah, and a thing I kept hearing from people, and I mentioned we were going to be talking about Harry Potter, is a lot of people, despite identifying strongly with their house that they were sorted into, a lot of people seem to have a problem with the house structure as a whole, because of kind of it segregates kids in a certain way. And then the joke that I've heard a couple times is that when your houses are the smart one, the brave one, the evil one, and the other house, it's putting strange requirements on the students that are put in those sections. So, maybe even looking at why that structure kind of built the way it did, outside of obviously the founders having the traits that they wanted, and kind of how we ended up with the house that was so connected to evil, and how that built, and nobody thought to dismantle it and change things.
But they could also show the fluidity within this system, that not everyone in Slytherin was evil. Some, sure, they have the traits of being ambitious.
Right. And I've had friends who are Slytherins fight back on that too. Who are like, no, not everyone. It's because you're in Slytherin doesn't mean you're evil. But all the evil wizards came from Slytherin.
Oh yeah, that's what. Not necessarily. What about Pettigrew? Peter Pettigrew.
Yeah, but he was just a sycophant.
Yeah, but then, as I said, going back, sort of, as I said, there isn't, especially when kids get older, they might explore their sort of darker side, no matter what house they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, Hufflepuff might be a bit difficult because, I can't picture many Hufflepuff kids going into becoming serial killers and genocidal maniacs.
Neither can I.
As I said, there's such a rich lore, and there's such things you can even go back, say, magic even before Hogwarts was even founded. Obviously, J.K. Rowling was inspired by quite a lot of British myths, and as well as Greco-Roman myths. But and you could also sort of go through what sort of people would have believed in, say, in Roman times or the Dark Ages, and you've so much. And obviously, that's the Fantastic Beasts films were showing. There is a wider world, and the wider world was hinted in the book. So, obviously, you got one school based in France. You got if you're talking about evil, you got the evil schools, let's say, in somewhere like Eastern Europe or Northern Europe. America has their own school, and there's those. And obviously, you can draw on magic, what it'd be like in different countries. Like if you imagine China, Japan, India, Arab world, or whatever, their legends and traditions would be a lot different to what we have in the Western world, and could be an interesting way to explore it on that front.
Yeah, and there's a Brazilian school, and there's a school in Africa, and all of that would be really intriguing and very different than any European or North American.
Yeah, exactly. And although I was thinking in Hogwarts, can you imagine how cruel this is? Imagine you're a kid from the upper Highlands of Scotland. They have to go all the way to London
just to go back
up north. Yeah,
that would be brutal.
You would hope that there would be other modes of transport, especially if you're Muggle-born. And as I said, if a school encompassed the whole of Africa, God, what do you do then?
God, I mean, yeah, even just having one school for, I guess it's all North America, the one in America. Like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
that's 300 plus million people for one school.
Yep. Said Europe gets at least 3.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's not fair.
Yeah, I think we have to tackle the big elephant in the room, J.K. Rowling herself.
Oh boy.
Yes. So I think she's done an amazing thing. She's got both sides of the culture war hating her because obviously she keeps sort of like, you got the sort of anti-PC brigade hating her because she's saying like, oh, she's just trying to be all PC, trying to check retcon her own work. And then you got the obviously the well, she's really peed off the LGBTQ community because of her recent comments. And obviously which you read, one of our most recent books is like of a serial killer of a man dressed as a woman, and you're thinking, JK, if you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you get the feeling she doesn't care. I mean, and it's two clear issues. You know, there's the one side is the constant retconning she's doing, which speaks to me that she's not wholly satisfied with what she's written, which is a problem. And I think if she just left it well enough alone and stopped doing that, it'd be fine. Like, she's written a beloved book series that people around the world enjoy. Just leave it. Just let it sit. Let it be what it is. You don't need to keep revisiting it and poking holes into it. It's only going to make things worse.
I think it's just like the amounts of times she's tried to retcon it as well. I think if it was simply Dumbledore was gay, I think, okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
we read the books from Harry's perspective. He probably wouldn't, we never actually knew anything about his personal history, so that's but then she kept going and going, like I think the one that really drove people over the edge was what Wizards did with their toilet habits.
Oh my god, yeah. And I mean, the one that really got to me was the entire climax of Cursed Child is her retconning the books, and it's just mind-boggling that she would allow that to happen. I mean, she obviously didn't write The Cursed Child, but she was involved in it and she had full okay over it. And so the entire purpose of that play is to retcon 2 characters within the original story. Like, it's insane to me that you would ever think that that was okay.
I think she's essentially turned into George Lucas. She's ruining her own creation.
Yeah, and then on the other side of it, you know, people say what they're going to say, but the fact that she puts these views out that are poorly researched, poorly written, just awful and damaging, and then continues to double down on them and doesn't have any PR rep telling her not to do this. Like, that's insane to me that she would continue to hurt her brand in this way, outside of the fact that the views she's espousing are horrific and very dangerous to have and to be putting out there with someone of her platform. But it's just, I just don't get why she's so into, I don't know, burning down what she built.
And it's all like seeing with some people who are fans of the Harry Potter series, they're revising their own interpretation of the books, or like seeing things like the goblins being quite pretty much Jewish stereotypes, because big seen as big-nosed bankers.
Yeah, there's definitely some troubling elements you can pull, and I personally don't have the knowledge, and I haven't looked into it far enough to really comment on that, but I have heard that from a number of people, and there's some stuff. There's some stuff there.
I was going to say, they had a Chinese character called Cho Chang, which admittedly she was admittedly I would say Harry should have gone with her, not but that's just me.
Well, yeah, and I mean, pulling back to that whole thing, you know, the fact that the films treated Ginny so terribly compared to how the books wrote her, which is also an interesting thing that I didn't care for. But yeah, and moving on to the Asian representation, you know, you've got Cho Chang as really the only East Asian character in the book.
Yeah.
The Patil sisters for South Asian.
But
then
I was going to say that within Britain, we tend to have a much larger South Asian community than East Asian community. So I think it's just the way, it's just how it works.
Oh yeah, I mean, based on how Britain accumulated countries, that would make sense. But yeah, I mean, and I've heard this from some of my Asian American friends. They have issue with Nagini in the Grindelwald films being, you know, one of the sole elements of East Asian representation there, who eventually turns into a silent snake that kills people, and that troubling connotation between that and
sort of submissive East
Asian. And kind of the historical representation of East Asian women as submissive or as kind of the femme fatale, and then have that all rolled up into one character and that be your only representation in a film. It's troubling.
Yeah, admittedly, my issues is just simply, why is Nagini human at all? But
yeah, why bother with that? No, I don't disagree on that point either. It's really weird to retcon that element as well.
Yeah, that sort of make you think, will there be ever a point that J.K. Rowling might just simply sell the rights to Harry Potter like George Lucas did with Lucasfilms? Because I'm not even sure if she's even that keen on it, even keen on her own work anymore.
At this point, I honestly don't know. Like, she doesn't seem to care that much about the continuity of the timelines, the arcs, the characters, the story that she originally wrote. And she doesn't seem to care that, you know, her dangerous, troubling views seem to be damaging her brand. She doesn't care. And so I honestly, I mean, I could see her just eventually saying screw it and selling it all. But again, does that really, what does it get us in the end?
Yeah, I was going to say with this as well, because Warner Brothers would be pretty happy to just buy it out, like you know, have something that they can rival Disney with. Like Disney would have Marvel and Star Wars and all that, whilst Warner Brothers would have Harry Potter and DC.
Yeah, so each one will have one troubled property and one really good property.
Exactly. That's how the world works.
Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting actually, to have Warner Brothers have complete control of DC and Harry Potter and just be able to do whatever the hell they wanted with it.
Yeah, have a crossover.
Oh God, that's the last thing we need is Zack Snyder doing Harry Potter.
I was going to say, imagine just Harry Potter meeting Batman and Superman.
Oh God, that would be so bad. But I would watch it just for like the car crash aspect of it all.
Yeah. Though you're on a more serious point, can you imagine if someone like a Guillermo del Toro got their hands on it? He was, maybe if he was just given like a certain parameters, they just absolute things he can't break, but because he was considered to direct some of the Harry Potter films. I mean,
you give him like the Goblin Uprising or one of the magical creature stories, that could be sensational.
Yeah, I think with because as I say, I think Harry Potter did get some pretty good filmmakers, because obviously they got Alfonso Cuarón is obviously the big one. Chris Columbus was well respected beforehand. You know, lots of family films, Home Alone and all that. And obviously David Yates has pretty much made his career because he was mainly a TV director before doing Harry Potter. And there are seeing like some of the names that were attached to the series as a whole. You had like Spielberg, which I think is actually quite lucky that it never happened, because he was planning to Americanize it all.
That would have been a disaster.
Yes, very much so. M. Night Shyamalan when he was actually at the height of his powers. Terry Gilliam, which was actually J.K. Rowling's first choice. Can you imagine how amazing that would have been? A Terry Gilliam directed Harry Potter film.
It would have been so whimsical and just incredible.
Yeah. And yeah, they had I think if you go like for the IMDb trivia pages, you see some of the directors they had linked, like Matthew Vaughn as well, you know, X-Men First Class and Kingsman series and all that. So that could have been.
Yeah, he would have been really interesting with some of the later films, some of the more darker aspects.
Yeah, I think it would have been quite a lot. His film would have been a lot like his Stardust, if you ever seen that.
I have not.
All right, it's a good family fantasy film. It's sort of Neil Gaiman authored book.
Okay.
Yeah,
I enjoy Neil Gaiman, so.
Yeah. So yeah, and as I said, I'm sure there'll be there's obviously loads of filmmakers currently who would love that chance to play around with the Harry Potter world, and obviously there'll be a whole new generation of filmmakers, writers that would have grown up on Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have now loved the chance to do something with the franchise.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much road left to explore within it that I do hope that there's, you know, even if they're just one-off standalone films, something that really just starts digging into the world outside of, you know, wars and battles and good versus evil, and just kind of explores smaller elements of the world.
Yeah. I think it's also with Harry Potter, it did have a massive impact on the British film industry as well, because the joke is if you're an actor with half a reputation in Britain, you either do Harry Potter, Doctor Who, or Game of Thrones. Some people might be able to do at least two of them. And it's obviously lots of things like sprung up, like effects houses had to be created to accommodate, obviously, because obviously Harry Potter's a special effects laden series, and the effects did improve a lot as the series, because I think even the producers of Harry Potter would admit that, like, some of the effects in the first two films were really ropey.
Oh, they were.
Yeah. And it's also I'm going to sound like Ronald Reagan, but it's like it did have that trickle down effect. And after Harry Potter, Britain did become a very popular place to film blockbusters. So there were loads obviously that were filmed here. You had like Pirates of the Caribbean 4, X-Men First Class, Edge of Tomorrow, just loads of blockbusters.
Yeah, and the crazy thing too is, you know, I remember when the first film came out, it was either the same year or right after the Lord of the Rings first film came out.
Yeah.
And so we had that 1-2 punch of those two films within the same year. Like, that's just insane. Also, the number of British actors who were employed on those two films is pretty insane too.
Yeah. So I think anyone with anyone halfway big who would have you just did get a role in Harry Potter, and I would say most of the casting was on point, especially for the adult characters. And you're thinking, like, some of them weren't even the first choices. Like Helena Bonham Carter wasn't actually the first choice to play Bellatrix Lestrange, and Tim Roth was actually considered first to play Snape. And you just like,
that's insane. No,
I know. Alan Rickman was perfect for the role.
He was ideal, and Helena Bonham Carter was Bellatrix. Like, it was perfect.
So again, obviously the kids when they first started were pretty bad, but then obviously that's because they were children and so they didn't really have much acting experience. But they did improve a lot. Though admittedly, I would say, whilst Emma Watson is perhaps the most famous out of the trio, I think she's actually the weakest as an actress.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, I've seen Daniel Radcliffe in a couple other things too, and I mean, he's good. I just don't ever think he's gonna be great. I think Rupert Grint probably has the most interesting range out of all of them.
Yeah, he's got good comedic timing, comedic abilities. So that's uh, the problem. The problem is he's not. How to put it nicely? Yes, he hasn't really got the look to be a movie star, though, has he?
No, but he could be a really good comedic character actor if
Yeah,
he wants that.
yeah, yeah. It's just. It's actually like Neville Longbottom. If you've seen how he's changed, he was like the chubby little kid, and now he's basically got the looks that most men would kill for.
Yeah, he's become ridiculously good looking. It's amazing.
So yeah, I think that we've had a pretty fun discussion of something we really enjoy. Hopefully, we'll be doing this again, Gene. Plenty we can talk about. Star Trek, Star Wars, DC.
I'm on board for all of them.
Yeah. So yeah. So to our listeners, thank you very much for listening to us tattle on. We, if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, like us on Facebook, Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and hope you will hear. And obviously, if you leave a comment, take care. Bye.